So my dad's two favourite words growing up were motivation and inspiration, and it just used to go straight over my head and my sister's. But given time and hours and hours of having to learn pieces on my own with nobody to tell me what to do, just like an endless amount of notes that I have to get through, those two words come in really handy. For me, a lot of the time it involves taking a bit of a step back from just like the endless kind of repetition of practicing. And looking elsewhere. So what can inspire you to actually play better and to channel more feeling and energy and commitment into your playing? For me, it's a whole load of different things. It can be from just making sure my mood is sort of in a good place, going out for a walk, getting some fresh air. That's so boring, but it's useful and helpful. Looking at the rest of the body of repertoire written by that composer. So for me at the moment, I'm working on Prokofiev's Second Violin Concerto and Bernstein Serenade. So if you take the Prokofiev, I have been listening for the entire last 10 days to as much of his piano music as possible. It's some of my favourite repertoire. I've been listening predominantly to Sokolov playing. And to Richter. And then I've been listening to his symphonies. And of course what he's probably most famous for, which is his ballet music. So I've been sort of looking at his Second Violin Concerto through the spectrum of his entire creative output, which for me just contextualizes everything, it brings it to life, and I find it invigorating and very inspiring. When it comes to being motivated, I'm a big fan of looking at other people that do what you do. So listening to recordings of other violinists, it doesn't necessarily have to be on the piece that you are preparing, but just generally absorbing and listening as much as possible to the masters of your instrument. People of last century who are no longer alive, to a whole host of fantastic violinists that are out there now, most of whom have either recordings or YouTube videos or something on Spotify. It's so easy now, it's easier than ever to get inspired by everything that's surrounding you. Some people will say if you're learning a piece of music, especially for the first time, try to not be influenced by a lot of other interpretations, and certainly don't try to copy somebody else. Now, I definitely sit on the fence with that, because I think so much of our development from baby times until adulthood, you are imitating, you're practicing empathy for another person. And although I certainly never lived a life that comes close to the experiences that Prokofiev did throughout his lifetime, I am practicing a sense of deep empathy with his expression, who he was as a person. And I believe the same thing is possible in listening to the way other people play. You're developing a sense of admiration and, to an extent, imitation of how they have mastered their instrument and what they have to say through their instrument. So I personally find it very uplifting and inspiring, and I find it improves my musicianship a lot to listen to the best violinists I can find and pay attention to what they do.
As with most arguments made for or against any given thing, there's usually a valid counter-argument. So I just want to give this some air for a moment, because I've heard many teachers become extremely frustrated when students have watched 20 different videos of the piece that they're learning, and they've ended up kind of nonsensically trying to copy these few bars from this musician and the next passage from another musician, and trying to put it together. It just doesn't make sense or sound authentic. This definitely isn't a great idea either. So I would advise you to exercise some control and intelligence when watching others playing the piece that you are working on. Definitely don't just copy without context. Don't imitate without asking yourself, what do I want to say and what is my overall style?
I also think that so much of playing comes from some place inside you can't articulate. It's an all-encompassed mix of feelings that are not necessarily categorized into happy, sad, joyful, whatever. They are far more complex than that, as most of this music that we're playing clearly is. And a lot of the music also morphs from kind of one state to another. So to try to take a moment to allow yourself to feel as deeply as possible, that might sound a little bit abstract, but you can do that in so many different arenas in your life. So it can be through the personal relationships you have, to contemplate what your relationship to your sibling is or your mother, to listen to a piece of music and be in a kind of concentrated state enough that you're actually moved by what you're hearing. Just to allow yourself to go to that usually slightly uncomfortable place of feeling something very deeply. Every time you put yourself through an experience like that, it may be that you're watching a history program, it may be that you are learning about a war, it may be that you are following the story of an inspirational individual that has nothing to do with music, it may be that you're learning about the plight of a country that fell upon hard times. It doesn't matter what it is, to allow yourself to feel something from those stories and to practice a sense of empathy. All of these things can be channeled into your playing and make you a more sincere and dedicated musician.
So I thought I would just share with you now a little clip of me playing the Prokofiev second violin concerto that I have been referring to earlier in this video. So this particular concert was actually the day after my older sister's wedding. As you can imagine, I was ever so slightly tired, and I look a little bit tired too, but I was playing with the unbelievably cute and adorable and brilliant and hardworking National Children's Orchestra of Great Britain and the conductor Jonathan Bloxham. So I hope you enjoyed this little opening of the concerto, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, and lots of love to all of you.